Hello and welcome to the Central Television. I am Likon Onobanjo. Here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin with the latest from Onga, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the United Nations, emphasizing that Hamas must be removed from power. He stressed that if Hamas remains, it will continue to attack Israel as it has vowed to do so. Netanyahu's statement comes amid escalating tensions between Israel and Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip.
And the reason is simple. Because if Hamas stays in power, it will regroup, rearm, and attack Israel again and again and again, as it is vowed to do. So Hamas has got to go.
In the meantime, Israeli Prime Minister also stated that operations against Hezbollah will continue despite proposals for a 21-day truce. Netanyahu emphasized Israel's right to remove the threat and ensure citizens' safety, vowing to persist until objectives are met.
Just this week, the IDF destroyed large percentages of Hezbollah's rockets, which it built with Iran's funding for 3 decades. We took out senior military commanders who not only shed Israeli blood, but American and French blood as well. And then we took out their replacements, and then the replacements of their replacements. And we'll continue degrading Hezbollah until all our objectives are met.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at the United Nations General Assembly was met with a walkout by many delegates who chose not to listen to his address. This dramatic exit was a show of dissent and disagreement with Netanyahu's views. Despite this, Netanyahu continued his speech, emphasizing Israel's right to self-defense and criticizing militant Islamism. To further discuss this, I'm joined by Ejike Okpa, Global Affairs Analyst, and he joins me from Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much, Mr. Okpa, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Benjamin Netanyahu's speech was welcomed with a walkout. What is your take on that, looking at the body language of those who seem averse to his speech?
Well, I mean, that is to be expected. Benjamin Netanyahu, he's been he served as Prime Minister for a very long time. His position hasn't changed on going after enemies of Israel, whether within Israel or outside of Israel. And, UN is the stage that enables people to come and say what they say. So people wouldn't agree with what somebody's saying, they're entitled to walk out, and that's what just happened. But it goes back to tell you that the UN is not an effective organization. Because if UN is all about peace, then there should have been a UN peacekeeping force, in the contested area of Israel and Palestine. But the UN can do it. But UN will have their peacekeeping force like in Congo, wherever, since they've been over there, and everywhere else. Because the Israelis are supported by Jewish American is backing them, and European nations back them. So it's one of those, do as I say, not as I do. And this will continue to, nobody's going to call Netanyahu to order, not Biden, not the Prime Minister in UK. So Netanyahu has, freedom to do whatever he wants to do. Nobody's going to stop.
And that freedom would actually inform the fact that he came on the platform to say that he's demanding for Hamas to be removed from power. And, I'm looking at it if that's a viable strategy, or maybe it's just a political maneuver to appease his domestic audience.
Well, it could be all of the above. The point is that he's a demand. He's not even requesting. He's not even suggesting. He said, I am asking you to. And so he's very emphatic on that word, demanding. Again, whether that will convey fear, whether that will make Hamas to go back and regroup and push back. The world is not going to be a peaceful place. I don't care what anybody goes to UN to say. I don't know I don't care how the leaders, go over there and make their 15 minutes of fame. Nothing is going to happen. By the end of this week, this is all over, and then we go back to whatever is facing every nation. Every nation has their political challenges as well as their socio-economic challenges. I just wish, like African nations that constitute about 28% of the membership of UN, who say, forget this stuff, we're not going there anymore. We have our own issues. But they're not going to do it, because what they do, they are bigger nations. They just go over there, look like people's people. I mean, when Shitima talked you look at the audience, how many people were there? This is the guy representing the most populous black nation in the world, and nobody cares what they say. So Africa is not of an interest to anybody, except occasionally it's mentioned and everybody says, oh, okay, they still remember us. The reason they do that because there are no strong African leaders. There are no credible African leaders. They act like people's president. So forget this UN. Don't go there. Tell them, hey, we're not coming. They can have the stage there. But if you go back to your internal resources and form your own member nations and say, we here, let's take care of our own home before we start to look across the fence line.
But Africa itself has its own member nations regionally now. We can talk about the AU, we can talk about ECOWAS, SADC and the likes. And one of our guests on the show this evening said that these bodies have been redundant. Is there a way we can rejig, galvanize, probably spur them to stand up and fight for the rights of the African continent?
Of course, that's the wish. But the point here is, if the parts that make the whole are weak, what do you think the whole is going to be? There's no African leader that has respect or credibility. I mean, okay, let's look at ECOWAS. ECOWAS has the greatest number, or the largest number of countries in a region, 15 of them. Is it Tinubu that has respect? And then you go to the East African side, is it the guy, whatever his name is in Kenya, or is it South Africa? So you have to first of all look at yourself. The Igbos have this saying that, you have to look good from the inside before the outside people can even notice. So nobody's looking good from inside. All they do constantly is run abroad, go overseas, go to Paris, go to London and seek assistance, or advice. When you say, no, I'm not going to do this. One of the ways to deal with the Western world is say, I'm not going to do this. I'm no longer going to toe your line. So until you have that internal strength and be confident in what it is you want to push and let the world know, there are no perfect nations. Every nation, even America, has its own challenges. UK has it. Russia has it. China has it. But how come these people with all their challenges will still come to Africa and look like angels? And then Africans are just following them and kissing up to them? Is it recently some of them went to China, and China is promising them $50 billion. Divide that number with the 54 African countries, and this is over 3 years. That means nobody's even getting $1 billion for 3 years. And then Africans are excited about that. What the money you're asking China that don't even believe in Jesus and the Bible, it was not wired to them. Why don't you create your own currency and give to somebody else?
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, we understand. We understand the issues. Now that we are having Hamas, we have Hezbollah's presence in this conflict in Lebanon. We have the Syria, of course, and the impact as, of course, as we are recording in the regional scheme of things. And now, when you look at the plays or the roles of the interplays of these particular bodies or regions or countries, as we put it. What implication would that have for Israel's security and regional balance of power?
No, since Israel was created in 1948, it's never had any peaceful time because, it's like Israel was smacked in the middle of, land that the Palestinians said belongs to them. And that's what created the Hezbollah in the north, and then, the Hamas in the south. And I don't know whether you know this history. The choice of Israel would have been on the land between Libya and Uganda, but, the president, U.S. president at the time, I forgot what his name, canceled it and put them where they are. So since that time, they haven't had any peace. Because just like you can imagine, if you have a mansion and somebody, just in the middle of that mansion has their own home, and then he divides you, divides you with your family on both sides. And then what you're going to do? It's a human thing. There was an error in creation of Israel, and that error is what has, exacerbated and enhanced all this friction. People have won Nobel Prize, making peace for Israel, and then where are we with that peace? Again, I always have this, questioning I do. If that's where Jesus was buried or born, how come that's one of the most toughest part of the world? Can Jesus send them something, remote control, and then there'll be peace? But Jesus ain't going to do that because even when he was here, it wasn't anything. No, I want us to know this because it's a human factor. It has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with Muhammad or Jesus. The human beings have to come together, come to a table, look each other in the eye, say, what are we fighting for? There's always an opportunity cost. What are you willing to give up in order for you? If you can't answer that question of opportunity cost and what you're going to give up, then you're going to be in a perpetual war. And that's what is going on. What is Israel going to do? What is Palestinians going to do? And then the people that supply them the arms don't want this thing to end. Remember, the military-industrial complex is a money-making machine. And everybody, since this is couched around security, everybody wants security of properties and people. So it's going to keep going. If you stop that conflict from existing, then all these companies that make billions of dollars, what are they going to do? So well, it's a human factor, and I don't know whether this is going to end, but if it ends, it will be fine.
I guess there's another twist to it, I must say. But finally, before I let you go, let's look at the U.S. role in the conflicts. There have been calls for a two-state solution. Benjamin Netanyahu did not make any reference to that in his speech today. And I'm asking, what role do you think the U.S. can play in mediating the Israel-Hamas conflicts, probably, influence a two-state solution to this? Or do you think that Israel's relationship in some way can actually influence some sort of peaceful resolution to this conflict that is having with Palestine?
The two-state solution is not new. Everybody from Clinton, from Bush, from president before now, Anwar Sadat and whomever else got Nobel Prize on it. It's not gonna happen. And so because of that, again, it's like, what is the magic wand? America is the reason Israel is emboldened. America created them. America was the ones that resettled and brought in all the Jews after the World War ended and said, okay, here's where you're going to go. So America influence is very necessary in dissolving it. But here's what the challenge is. The Jewish Americans are the most effective organized ethnic group in America. There are 8 million Jews in America. Their effectiveness dominates African Americans, Black people, including 45 million, dominates the other 45 or so million of Hispanic people. And of course, the white people love the money because the Jewish people control the media as well as the money. And so when you funnel money to the politicians, you got them to start talking from both sides of their mouth. And, the Palestinians that are in America are not as effectively organized. They are consumed with their own prestige and mansions and flashy cars. But the Jews are very focused, are very determined. And so not only are the Jews in America that effective, the Jews all over the world, they will rally for a cause which other people are not willing to do. So until you build that structure and you become that strategic, you're never not going to get a result. Okay. You know how much money America gives Israel? Israel gets more money than any other country in the world. And here's another thing you want to know. There are more Israeli-based companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange than all of the companies in Africa that are listed on the stock exchange. Wow. So people don't know this stuff. They just think, oh, Jews, the Jews. For every Black person, for every Jewish person in America, there are 6 Black people. If 2 heads are better than 1, how come 1 head is dominating the rest of the 6? These are something people need to think about. These are something people need to chew and not just run around PhD, doctor, blah, 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 while your own house is falling apart. I respect the Jewish people because, it's a proof of quality is better than quantity.
Okay.
And
Ejike, Okpa, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Very insightful.
Well, thank you for having me, and have a very good weekend. You're looking good on that jacket, bro.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Of course, we'll go on a very short break on the news. When we return, we'll tell you that United Nations has called for action to stop gang violence in Haiti. Do stay with us. I'll tell you that United Nations human rights spokesperson Ravina Shamsadani calls on Asian authorities to step up efforts to stop gang violence and strengthen state institutions which are crippled by endemic corruption. The United Nations is urging Asian authorities to strengthen efforts to combat this gang violence, which has claimed over 3,600 lives this year. The country has plunged into chaos with gangs controlling the capital and security, including health systems, as we're seeing to have collapsed. The UN reports that 600,000 people were displaced in the first half of 2024, and 1,280 were injured in gang violence, including women and children. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, emphasizes that no more lives should be lost to this senseless criminality. Let's now head to America, where Vice President Kamala Harris aims to challenge former President Donald Trump on immigration during a Friday visit to Arizona's southern border, attempting to transform a political weak spot into an advantage. Administration and immigration have taken center stage in the 2024 presidential race, with surveys indicating that voters have more confidence in Trump's ability to manage the issue than Harris. For News Central's chief international correspondent, Afia Hagen, she has more.
Vice President Kamala Harris plans to go on the offensive against former President Donald Trump on immigration on Friday when she visits the southern border in Arizona, as she tries to turn a political vulnerability on its head. Immigration has featured prominently in the 2024 presidential election, with polls showing voters placing more trust in Trump to handle the issue than Harris. Democrats grappling with years of border crisis have tried to gain ground by pointing to the bipartisan border measure that congressional Republicans blocked earlier this year after Trump came out against it.
But I am speaking now.
Advisors to the Vice President remain concerned about the gap between the candidates on immigration. But they also cite recent polling showing Trump's lead on the issue eroding since Harris took over from President Joe Biden at the top of the Democratic ticket, providing them an opportunity, they say, to amplify their message and close the gap further.
Well, thank you very much for being here.
Harris plans to use her Trump to the US-Mexico border to slam Trump for scuttling the bipartisan border deal and lean into her work as Attorney General of California, a border state.
To truly protect reproductive freedoms,
Harris campaign officials think she has a case on immigration, using the failed bipartisan border measure to cast Trump as unserious at the border and citing her record as California Attorney General tackling transnational criminal gangs. Campaign allies have also stressed the need to look beyond the border and speak to broader immigration reform, pulling from the Vice President's background in the Senate and in California working on immigration issues. Immigration is one of the #1 topics on the minds of voters at the ballot box, and one that Harris needs to get a handle on to stretch her lead in the polls. For News Central, I'm Afia Hagen.
New York Mayor Eric Adams has pleaded not guilty to charges of fraud and bribery in a federal court. This shocking turn of events marks a dramatic fall from grace for a politician once seen as a rising star in the Democratic Party. Adams, the first sitting New York mayor to face criminal indictments, denied wrongdoing and vowed to continue serving the city. Let's also tell you that Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida, causing widespread power outages and flooding across the southeast of the U.S. The storm left at least 4 people dead and millions without power. As Helene weakened into a tropical storm, it brought heavy rain and flash flooding to Georgia and South Carolina. Officials warn of catastrophic flooding, landslides, and record river flooding. The storm's aftermath shows destroyed buildings, downed power lines, and debris-filled roads. In North America, thousands of people, including relatives of 43 students presumed to have been massacred, marched through Mexico City on Thursday for an emotionally charged protest marking the 10th anniversary of the tragedy. This is happening days before Claudia Sheinbaum takes oath as Mexico's first woman president. The students' disappearance on the night of September 26, 2014 drew international condemnation and shocked a nation where criminal violence has claimed more than 450,000 lives since 2006. So far, the remains of only 3 of the missing students from the Ayotzinapa Rural Teacher Training College in the southern state of Guerrero have been found and identified. The families hold the ruling left-wing party of outgoing President Andrés Manuel López Obrador a close ally to Sheinbaum, responsible for the failure to locate the remainder.
Pues yo me siento como si hubiera sido ayer la desaparición de mi hijo porque nos hace falta en nuestra casa. Como familia nos sentimos muy tristes porque no está con nosotros y pues ahora sí que el gobierno no ha hecho nada ya por nosotros. Pues ahorita apenas es una reunión que hemos tenido con Claudia, pero pues yo siento que es lo mismo. No va a seguir más.
La vida pues aún sigue abierta. Andrés Manuel dijo que continuaría el caso y que habría esclarecimiento.
And that's all on Beyond the Continent at this hour. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. Well, you can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV and watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, OVO TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekon Onobanjo.